Okay, this video is going to go along with activity 1.2.4, which is fundamentals of dimensioning. So the basic idea of dimensioning is that when we create something like a model that we want to have somebody else make, one of the most important jobs of the designer is to communicate that design to the person that's actually going to be making it. If you send somebody just a picture of something like a sketch, like what we've got here with our multi-views, this on its own isn't going to be enough information to make the actual part. So what we need to still do is we need to add the dimensions in this part so that the person making it knows how big to make everything and can do that in an efficient manner. So today we're going to be looking at adding dimensions to our multi-view sketches that we made last time. And the whole point of this is to communicate everything that's necessary to produce the object from the drawings. Now, more and more with things like CNC machining and things like that, which is computer numeric control, your 3D model that you created on the computer is actually enough to make the part entirely on its own. But a lot of things are still done more by hand, and we want to be able to kind of check through our ideas and see that things are going to work before we just punch them into a machine that is going to make it for us. So when we go to dimension, one of the things that we got to worry about is following our standards. Now, we used to talk a lot about the different types of standards that exist out there. Military standards, ASME, which is American Society for Mechanical Engineers. There's a whole bunch of these groups out there that produce standards for how to properly add dimensions to a drawing document. Now, thankfully, they've gotten rid of a lot of the stuff and simplified it. You are taking an introduction to engineering design class, not learning to be a draftsman. So, again, we're not going to follow this exactly, but I do want to go through and talk about some of these important things here. So the first thing I want you to see here is we've got to add dimensions. They're going to look like this. So there's a couple of new types of lines that we're going to add. Extension lines are going to come out from the part, and that's where we show our dimensions. You've kind of already seen these in Onshape. It's going to do it very, very similar to this. A couple of things to note here. You're going to see there's a tiny little gap between the extension line and the actual object. That's to help us not be confused about where the object actually stops and the extension lines start. Dimension lines look like this. They have arrows at the end, and then you put the number right in the middle. That's the line that's going to show how long something is. And I don't think there's any in this, but if there's ever a situation where your number will not fit between there, you can also put the number outside of the lines, and you might see that happen, especially when we go to do this on Onshape. It'll do it automatically for you. And then finally, you've got leader lines. Now, leader lines have this little 45-degree angle with an arrow at the end. They are used for dimensioning things like circles, arcs, fillets, things like that are not just going to be straight line distances. You can also see a few things here where we've dimensioned to that center mark. It's okay that extension line goes right through the part. That's fine. We want to avoid it if possible, but when the feature we're dimensioning is in the middle of the part, it's obviously not possible. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this flow chart that Project Lead the Way provides, and we can kind of just go through it here as an example, and I have it here a little bit bigger too when we talk about doing one of these on our own. So we're going to start with this here. I'm trying to see if I can zoom in just a little bit. Not really. Okay. Anyway. So we're going to start off by creating our multi-views. You've already done this for the ones you're going to do. Then we're going to look at the number of features. We're going to look for big features. Here we see kind of 3-ish. We've got the entire piece, which they're counting as one. We've got this little notch up here, and we've got this hole. For the purposes of this, the two features, the notch and the hole, are the ones we're concerned about right now, and we'll come back and do the actual block later on. So next up, we select the view. Now, when we select a view, we want to show the feature with as much detail as possible without any hidden lines. So in this case, that notch is best shown in the front view. Here, we don't really see what it is. Here, it's really hard to see what it is. Here, we can see that it's a notch. And so we're going to add our dimensions in that view. So we're going to take that. We're going to dimension each feature's size and location. So keep in mind size and location. So here, we've dimensioned its size. 1.5 inches long, 1/2 inch high, and 1 inch wide. and its location is right at the corner. In this case, we don't need to add any dimensions for location because it just is the corner. So that's all we need to do there. Then next step is going to be to ask ourselves, is every feature dimensioned? No, it is not. We still need the whole. So we go back and now we're going to do the whole. With wholes, we always want to do them in the view that shows them as circles. That's true for any circle. And so we pick this view here. Now we need to dimension again the size and location. This one is going to have both. So, sorry, pausing here. We talked about center lines and center marks later. You already have those in your drawing. So our whole here, we've got a size dimension here. I know it's kind of small, but the size of a circle is going to be a 1/4 inch. We use this little diameter symbol to show that. And then its location is going to be measured from some sort of a corner. It looks like it's 1/2 inch up and 1/2 inch over, measured to the center mark. And you'll see they're highlighting a few here. Number 2, only dimensioning a view that accurately shows the feature. We want to put our dimension in the view that shows the whole as a circle. We never dimensioned to hidden lines. That's not really a problem here. We picked the view that showed it best. We would never want to dimension our circle here. And avoid crossing leader lines. So the leader lines always come out kind of a 45-degree angle so that they won't cross over any of the other ones. Now you can see they've also added the 3 inches here. That one would be one that we'd add later on as well, except for the fact that they're saying that this hole goes 3 inches all the way through the part. So then we ask, is every feature dimensioned? No, it is not. We still need the block. And so here we're going to add the overall dimensions. So we're going to add those overall dimensions here in this front view. And you see we've got an overall length of 3 inches. We've got an overall height of 1.5 inches. And we actually already had the overall width, or depth, I guess, of 1 inch. So we don't need to add those again. Now, a couple of things here. They are not really being too picky anymore about where these dimensions go, but always, always, always put the bigger dimensions further away because you don't want to cross over other dimension lines. If you put this like this 1.5 outside, you'd cross over the 3 and that'd be a problem. We also want to avoid putting like these overall dimensions below the part if possible. Sometimes it does make sense to do that, but we keep them usually inside the part if possible. So is every feature dimensioned? Now it is. That's completely dimensioned. We already had the overall dimensions. I kind of think that's the same thing as what we just did, but whatever. Now the last step is to look to see if there are no more views that need dimensions. In this case, the top view has no dimensions at all. So we should just get rid of that entirely. And we are completely done. That's our completely dimensioned item. So they also went ahead and gave us a few other examples here of what this might look like. So here you can see a couple examples. We've got this kind of shape where you can see they've got this little notch here and it's dimensioned. It's how far over it is. That's a location dimension. How wide it is, that's a size. How deep it is, that's a size dimension. Then we've got overall dimensions of 2, 1.5, and 3/4. Same kind of deal here. We've got our hole, we've got its size, we've got its location. Then we have overall dimensions there, there, and there. And then this one, just a little bit more complicated. You've got 2 big features here. And again, you'll see you've got size and location dimensions. You've got size and location dimensions, and you've got overall dimensions. That's kind of the big process to go through here. So we are going to take a look at 2 parts together. These are the ones that we drew in the multi-views. You're going to do the ones that you did on your own in the multi-views. So I've got my flow chart handy, and I've also got access to my 3-dimensional views of these things. So if we want that, we've got that there too. So we're doing this part right here, 12. And the first step is going to be to create my multi-view. I've already done that. Now let's go ahead and look at our features. I'm seeing 2 big features. I'm seeing this little corner cut off, and I'm seeing this piece that sticks out of the front. And so it doesn't really matter which one we do first. I'm going to start with the simpler one, the little corner cut off. And so my next step here is to select the best view for that feature. I'm going to go ahead and say the best view for that feature is the front view. I think that shows that feature the best. And it's not, in this view, it's hard to tell what it is exactly. And same with this view. But this view, you can tell what it is. So I'm going to want to add size dimensions first. And so I extend my extension lines out. Remember, each of these boxes was a 1/4, so this is a 1/2 inch. And I add those little arrows at the end. And then I do the same thing going this way. I'm going to extend those out. This one was 3/4 of an inch because it's 3 boxes, and I have those arrows at the end. Try to make your numbers centered, but if you can't get them perfectly, it's certainly fine here. Now, in this case, I don't need any other dimensions here. I just need to know that it's 1/2 inch from this corner and 3/4 an inch down from that corner. That is enough for this part. I don't need to know how long this is. It's right at the corner, so I don't need any more location dimensions. That's good enough. Next thing I want to do is this thing. Now, this one I'm going to need a little bit more information on. A good way to think about something like this is if I were to tell you where this point is and where this point is, you could connect the dots and make a straight line. So here I might want to do something like this. I'd extend these up and say, well, that's a 1/2 inch. Again, 2 boxes, it's 1/4 and 1/4, 1/2 inch. And then I'd also put one down here. This would be one case where I think putting it on the bottom is appropriate because the feature is on the bottom. And so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes, which is 1.5 inches. You can certainly use decimals. I'm not going to stop you there. The computer's going to use decimals anyway. Now, again, I don't need any location dimensions here because I'm measuring from this corner. If I had a feature like out in the middle of the part, then I would need some location dimensions. Now, one other thing that I'm going to need here is because this is something that is sticking out from my part like this, I do need to know how far out it is sticking. So that might be a place where I want to come up to this top view and dimension how wide that part is there. And so to do that, I could come like this and add in my 1/2 inch there. Something like that. Okay, so at this point, I've got my features. There's one there, completely dimensioned, completely dimensioned. Now, I'm onto this part. We need to dimension the overall object. So this is where I'm going to want to put overall width and overall height and overall depth. So we can keep extending these lines out to get the overall width. It is, I believe, 8 boxes, which is 2 inches. So I can extend that out. And I'm going to do the same thing for the height. I'm going to extend these out just a little bit further. This one is 6 boxes tall, which is 1 1/2 inches. And I also need the overall depth of the part. And so that might go up in this view. Again, I can just extend the ones I already have out further. That's going to be 1 inch, and I can put my arrows there. So now I know the overall depth of my part, width of my part, and height of my part. I know how big this feature is, and I know how big this feature is. So I've got everything I need. What I don't need anymore is this view. That's not really adding anything to this process. Now let's take a look at something that'll be a little bit more complicated. We've got this part going on now. And so remember that's this one right here. So we've got a lot more going on. We've got 2 circles there. We've got 1 circle there. We've got this little bump sticking up here. We've got these little tabs. We've got roundovers everywhere. Lots and lots of different things going on in this part. But we'll go through them one by one. So we've got our multi-views, and we're just going to start by picking a feature and dimensioning to it. So maybe we start with these circles. The only view I'd ever want to dimension these circles in is this top view, because in the other views, I don't actually see them as circles, and I never, ever, ever want to dimension to a hidden line. So with these circles, I need 2 things. I need a size dimension and a location dimension. And so for a size dimension, I'm going to use a leader line. Coming out like that. And I want to use diameter. So diameter symbol looks like that. And my diameter here is 2 boxes, so 0.5. Now, I've got an option here. Since I have 2 of these that are exactly the same, I could just go times 2. That would be fine. Or I could dimension both of them. I'm going to go with the times 2. I also need location dimensions. And so this would be a place where I'd want to dimension maybe from the edge of this part. So I could do something like this. And you'll see that's going to go over the part. That's fine. But that's 0.5 or 1/2 inch. And I'm going to do the same thing from over here. I also need to dimension up and down. Now I can actually do both of those together this way. If I just kind of extend that line through, there's nothing stopping me from doing 0.5 and doing both of them at once because they're at the same level up and down. So there's my circles done. Next, maybe I want to do one of these circles. So again, I'm going to use a leader line. That's 0.5 for the diameter. There's only one of them. And then I also want to dimension how far from the top it is and bottom it is. So here it's 0.5. And over from the side, 0.5. Other things I need to include here is the radius of these like curves. So that's another place where I'd like to use a leader line. If you're going to have to do this, try to go right through the corner. That's a good way to do it. So this one has a radius. It's an arc instead of a full circle. So we're going to use a radius. And that's the distance from the center to the outside. So here the radius is 0.5. And then the same thing over here. We can put this in a lot of different places. I might just come out like this. Radius 0.5. And since this one's got 2, I can just do a times 2 again. Okay, so we've got that. Next thing that I might want to do is dimensioning this little piece that comes up. And in this case, I think this view is probably the best way to do it. And so I'm going to go ahead and add some dimensions in there. So for something like this, we've got a couple of options here. And this is, where there's it's not exactly the same thing everybody's going to want. Not everybody's going to want this the same way. So I could do this a couple of different ways. I could dimension up from like how tall this is, and then just include an overall dimension to know how big that is. Or I could dimension this and include an overall dimension to let someone know how big this is. I probably tend to go towards this way of saying I'm going to dimension these little tabs here first. Like that. That's going to cover both of them. And then I'd also want to dimension, these. So that'd be 1 inch there. And I'd probably want to do the same thing on the other side. Now, last thing I'm going to need for these little tabs is how wide they are. And that would be a good thing to put up in this view. So I can, again, extend these out a little bit further. That's 1 inch. And I'm good to go. That also gives me my overall depth, which is a good thing to include. Now, the final thing I'm going to need here is just my overall dimensions. How wide is this whole thing? How tall is this whole thing? So overall dimensions here, this might be one place where putting them down at the bottom is okay. But I don't see any reason why I can't put them up at the top. This one is 3 inches wide. It's 12 boxes, so 12/4 is 3. And then to get me my up and down top view, or up to down dimension here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7/4 is going to be 1.75. And there I've got my completely dimensioned drawing here. So going through, you're going to see a couple of things. Look for features. There's a circle. Does it have a size? Does it have a location? There's a circle. Does it have a size and a location? There's a feature. Does it have a size? And its location is the corner. So that's good. And then you've got the overall dimensions. That's how you know you've got everything you need. All my views have some dimensions in them. They were all useful, so I can't get rid of any of them on this one. And so I am done. That is completely dimensioned. So for this assignment, you have your 4 that you've already made. None of them were quite this complicated. Number 11 is going to be the closest. But give that one a shot. And then you had number 1. Your big features here are these little cutouts. Number 4, your big features are those 2 little knobs coming up. And then number 7, kind of the same idea. You've got those 2 things coming out that you're going to have to dimension. So go ahead and give those a shot. Take your time on these. I know you're only dimensioning 4 parts and you probably think it's only going to take you like 5 minutes to do, but take your time. Spend a half an hour, spend 5, 10 minutes, at least 5 minutes on each of them, if not a little bit longer.